بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قال تعالى في القرآن المجيد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وعلى الثلاثة الذين خلفوا حتى إذا ضاقت عليهم الأرض بما رحبت وضاقت عليهم أنفسهم وظنوا أن لا ملجأ من الله إلا إليه ثم تاب عليهم ليتوبوا إن الله هو التواب الرحيم. Respect brothers and sisters in Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this verse in Surah At-Tawbah, and there's a lengthy story and discussion, but I'll try to point a few points from that story, not in too much detail inshallah, but there are some important lessons. And this was a year before the Prophet ﷺ passed away, and the Muslims now were heading out on a very big expedition, the Battle of Tabuk. And until now they had been fighting amongst themselves, different Arab tribes. Now they were going to go and fight against the mighty Roman Empire with over 100,000 people, soldiers in their army. So now Rasulullah ﷺ called for all the Sahaba, and he said that now it's time for us to march north to go and fight against the Romans. And Rasulullah ﷺ and the Muslims, this particular time was a very difficult time because this was going to be a very strenuous campaign. Nonetheless, all the Sahaba, they accepted the call of Rasulullah ﷺ, but as usual, the hypocrites, they started making excuses, and many of them stayed behind. But what happened was, amongst the believers, amongst the Sahaba who were not hypocrites, who had true belief, there were three Sahaba, three believers, true believers, who were left behind. They did not attend the battle. They did not go with Rasulullah ﷺ in the expedition. And this particular verse speaks about them. And one of those Sahaba that's mentioned there is Ka'b ibn Malik, radiallahu anhu. And he was very eloquent, and he mentions this entire story very eloquently. And I'll make it very short, but when Rasulullah ﷺ went out for Tabuk, there was no battle. There was no battle. So as Rasulullah ﷺ was coming back, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had already mentioned to him that the munafiqeen, the hypocrites, are going to come to you now, one by one, and they're going to present their excuses, one by one. I couldn't come to this battle because of my family, because of my, my kids, because of my business. So Rasulullah ﷺ was already pre-warned that they're going to come one by one, and they're going to present an excuse. So when this happened, Ka'b ibn Malik, he realized that he procrastinated. He had intention of joining the Prophet, but what happened was it was ripe season for his business. And what he said was when the campaign went out, he's like, I'm going to join them after a couple of days. That couple of days, it turned into more than a couple of days, and before he knew it, he realized the Prophet is coming back from the expedition. Now he was extremely worried. He was like, what am I going to tell the Prophet ﷺ? I had no legitimate excuse. Right? The Prophet ﷺ literally had a military draft, and I did not attend the battle. So now he's afraid because he made a huge blunder, a huge mistake. So now he goes to the company of the Prophet ﷺ, and you see all the munafiqun, they're all lined up. One by one they're coming and they're presenting their excuses. And Rasulullah ﷺ, because he did not want to create mischief in the community, each munafiq was coming and he's making an excuse. Rasulullah knew he's making a bogus excuse, but he would say, okay, Allah has forgiven you. It's okay. You had a legitimate reason. Go ahead. Go ahead. When Ka'b ibn Malik came, and before I mention what happened, he had made up his mind that I'm not going to make any excuse up. I'm going to go to the Prophet ﷺ, and I'm going to tell him I didn't attend because I made a mistake. No, I have no excuse. So when he came in front of the Prophet ﷺ, and he started speaking to the Prophet ﷺ, he told him, Ya Rasulullah, I have no legitimate reason that I did not join you on this campaign of Tabuk. Rasulullah ﷺ did not give him the same answer as the munafiqun. He actually told him, he said, let us await for a ruling regarding this. Let us await. He didn't say, okay, it's okay, go, like he did for the munafiqun. He knew he was a true believer. He said, I will abstain silence. I will maintain silence. I will not say anything. And then they waited and waited and waited. And it became so difficult upon this Sahabi and the two other companions that now everyone in the city was boycotting them. No one was to speak to them. No one was to speak to them. They said it became such a dire situation that the two other Sahaba would sit in their homes and cry all day. They would weep because of the mistake. But Ka'b ibn Malik, he was bold. So he would go out into the marketplace. He would try to say salam to other people. No one would speak to him. No one. It was a boycott. He even tried saying salam to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet turned his face. That's how upset he was. Because number one, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't know what to do because no hukum had come. So the Prophet said, I cannot rule until Allah makes a ruling. So 50 days passed like this. A lot of detail. Those of you who stay for the tafsir after, inshallah, you'll get the detail. 50 days passed. 50 days passed. And then finally, Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anh, they found him praying on a rooftop somewhere. And they said, glad tidings to you. The ruling regarding you has come. The Prophet is calling you. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is calling you. So in their tradition, when someone came with good news, you would give them a gift, a hadiyah. He had nothing in his possession, so he removed his kurta and gave it. He was so happy. He ran to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sitting in Masjid al-Nabawi, and he ran, and as he was going, picture this, as he's running to the Prophet, different Sahaba are shaking his hand. That glad tidings to you. You went through 50 days. We know what was going upon your heart. And the Quran says, ضَاقَتْ عَلَيْهِمُ الْأَرْضُ, that his heart became narrow like the earth, like how when you get constricted and tight in a tight space, like in a tombstone, for example. His heart had become constricted of grief. So he goes to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet says, come, glad tidings upon you. In the hadith it mentions the Prophet's face was gleaming with joy. He was smiling. It was shining, literally, in the hadith it says. And then he says that, oh God, you have been forgiven. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forgiven you. And he said that this day should be greater to you and should be more joyous to you than the day you were born. Because what happens when a child is born? He's born what? He's born sinless. So that should be the happiest day. But Rasulullah said that because Allah revealed your innocence and your forgiveness, not your innocence, your forgiveness, this day is greater than the day of your birth. So what was his response? What was his response? I want us to really look at his response. He did two things. Number one, he said, oh Rasulullah, is this forgiveness from you or Allah? He said, no, Allah directly said you are forgiven. Allah said you are forgiven. Number two, he said, oh Rasulullah, I will now, after this is the greatest calamity that has befallen me in my life, I now want to give everything I have in sadaqah. Everything. He said, I don't have much, but he said, everything I have, even the property of Khaybar that I got, one thing he had, the most valuable thing that he had. It's like you have one really solid investment, nothing else. He's like, I want to give it to everything. I don't want to keep anything. Look at the mindset. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removed the hardship, and his mind immediately went to, I want to give sadaqah. I want to give. Because that sadaqah will repel, and had repelled whatever came upon him. The Prophet ﷺ said, don't do that, because the Prophet ﷺ was merciful. He said, I will take a third from you, 2/3 of whatever you have, you keep it for yourself. So my respected brothers and sisters, there's a lot of lessons in this for us. One is the importance of sadaqah, repelling not only harms, but when something good happens to us, give. The more good that happens, the more you give, the more you should give. Another thing is that you can see that he did not make an excuse. He did not say, oh Rasulullah, I had this excuse, I had that, and he did not lie. This is the most important point. Sometimes issues happen between husband and wife. We should make it a point, regardless of how bad the argument got, regardless of how many days you haven't spoken to your spouse, you don't make lies. Because however bad the situation is, you can forgive each other. Because insan makes mistakes. But if you start lying to gain someone's trust, it's easier to forgive a mistake. To gain someone's trust back after they've lied to you is much difficult than if you just make a mistake. Eventually your spouse will forgive you. So if it's a son and a father, if it's a husband and wife, if it's an employee and his boss, if it's a community member with another community member, remember, doesn't matter how bad things get, we should abstain from from lying and just speak the truth. Allah will open the way. The Sahabi said, ضَاقَتْ عَلَيْهِمُ الْأَرْضُ, that it had become really tight upon him, like the earth had tightened up upon him. وَضَاقَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ أَنفُسُهُمْ, that they said that we were so grieved. وَظَنُّوا, and they knew أَلَّا مَلْجَأَ مِنَ اللَّهِ إِلَّا إِلَيْهِ, that even though Allah is upset with us, what they say, only we can turn to Allah. They know Allah is upset, but the only one we have to turn to is Allah. And then look at his response. After he was forgiven, he said, I want to give everything in sadaqah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from those that whether it's good or it's bad in life, the first thing our mind should go to is dua and sadaqah in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because that sadaqah will be a means of so much beauty in your life and so much khair in your life. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. Subhanakallah wa bihamdi. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Inshallah, I'm going to hand it over to Brother Abdul Ghafur, and he has a very important message for us, inshallah, so your attention is much appreciated.
Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alamin. All praises are to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Lord of the worlds. Peace and blessings to our beloved Prophet, Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and his family and companions. Assalamu alaikum, my dear community members. We have been trying to give an update on the new masjid. We have been trying to give an update on the new masjid to various means, especially on the TVs. We have been putting up the information, but we still felt that one-on-one live session is important because many people don't understand it or appreciate better information. So what I'm going to do in the next few minutes is walk through some few information slides on the status of the project, inshallah. And you can always reach out to any of our team members. So Brother Jisam leads the new masjid project, and he's right there in the middle. And you can reach out to him or any one of the board members, inshallah, to get more details. The team is really working hard to get the project going. But before I run into the slides, I just want to make a few comments right outside of it, especially addressing our young children, 8 to 12 years of old. You really need to pay attention to this. This project is really, you will be one of the most important beneficiaries of this project, inshallah. And so I want you all to pay attention to this on the screen. Inshallah, the screen is also shown in the living and the banquet hall. And the second thing, before I jump into it, we have this community iftar, beautiful community iftar every Saturday and then every day. So we need just a small contribution. If every one of us, the adults here, there are about 300 people here, $100 if we just give, that will be paid off for that expense that we have. Azim runs that, and we are really sure of that. So please make sure that you hand at least $100 to him or through the kiosk, inshallah. So that will fund that entire operation. So let me just quickly jump into the presentation. So before I go into it, I just want to level set what this project is about. Many of the regular comers will know this thing, but I know during this Tarawih, we have a lot of new people, so I just want to make sure that we explain what this project is about. So we have this project right in front of you as you drive through this 1200 Hex Road entrance. It's sitting in an 8-acre property, 45,000 square foot building. We are building what is known as a phase 1, which is the masjid portion of it, which is highlighted within this red line. And the entire site area, the 8-acre site, we are preparing. That is the goal of the project, to finish it inshallah by end of this year. Alhamdulillah, I'm glad to report that at a high level we are on track, pending any unforeseen circumstances. So that is the goal of the project. So the school gym will be coming in the next phase. So what are the things that we have completed? So we have quite a bit of jobs completed. You may not be able to see them because they are all happening, many of them have happened inside or they have happened in the front side. In terms of the building, we have completed the plumbing works for bathrooms, we have completed foundations for the chrome which are inside because we need to put up new pillars, removing the existing pillars, so that have been completed inside. We have framing for the boundary of the phase 1 has been completed inside, and we have excavation done for the detention pond, the pile of the landfill that you see there, it came out of that. And we have also done demolition of the old pumpers. Those who have come here before the building demolition started, there used to be old pumpers that has been demolished.